The diagrams lie. Every textbook, every classroom poster, every digital render of the solar system shows the same comfortable image: clean ellipses, color-coded planets, orderly spacing, a mechanical perfection that implies permanence. It implies reliability. It implies that the 8 bodies orbiting this star have been doing so for 4.5 billion years because the mathematics demands it, and will continue doing so for 4.5 billion more. This is not science. This is mythology dressed in equations. The solar system is not a clock. It is a controlled collapse. It is a multi-body gravitational problem that has no clean analytical solution, a fact that has been mathematically confirmed since Henri Poincaré dismantled the fantasy of celestial permanence in 1887. What we observe as stability is not equilibrium. It is a temporary configuration of competing gravitational forces that have not yet accumulated enough error to terminate. The word "yet" is doing enormous work in that sentence. In March 2026, the James Webb Space Telescope, operating in conjunction with gravitational lensing analysis from the European Space Agency's Gaia Astrometric Catalog, returned data from the outer belt region proximal to Jupiter's leading Lagrange corridor. The data was not immediately understood. It took 11 days of cross-referencing before the pattern became undeniable. There was something out there, something with mass, something that should not exist in that region of the solar system, and it was invisible. The anomaly had no optical signature, no thermal emission, no radio return. It was detected by one method only: the way nearby objects bent toward it, the way space itself leaned in its direction. A gravitational shadow cast by a mass we cannot name and cannot see. What followed was not a discovery. It was a diagnosis. Jupiter is not a planet in any conventional sense that the word implies neighborhood, cohabitation, or passive presence. Jupiter is a gravitational engine. Its mass is 1.898 times 10 to the 27th kilograms. It is 2.5 times more massive than every other planet in this solar system combined. It does not share space with the inner planets. It dominates them. It organizes them. It decides, through the cold arithmetic of gravitational hierarchy, what survives in this system and what does not. The mechanism is understood, and it is blunt. Comets and asteroids approaching the inner solar system from the outer dark must pass through Jupiter's gravitational sphere of influence. That sphere extends approximately 48 million kilometers in radius. Any object entering that corridor is subject to one of 3 outcomes. It is captured into Jovian orbit, becoming one of the 95 confirmed moons or one of the thousands of unclassified captured bodies currently cataloged. It is accelerated and ejected from the solar system entirely, launched on a hyperbolic trajectory that removes it permanently from the threat column, or it is absorbed. It impacts Jupiter directly. This has been observed. In July 1994, comet Shoemaker-Levy 9, a fragmented periodic comet, was pulled apart by tidal forces and impacted Jupiter across a 6-day window. The largest fragment produced an impact scar in Jupiter's atmosphere larger than the diameter of Earth. The kinetic energy released was estimated at 600 times the total nuclear weapons arsenal of the entire human civilization. Jupiter absorbed this, silently, completely, and Earth never knew the danger had passed. This is not incidental. This is the operational condition under which Earth has existed for billions of years. Remove Jupiter or shift it or alter its gravitational reach by even a marginal quantity, and the filter breaks. The cometary pipeline into the inner system opens. The asteroid belt, currently maintained in a stable resonance distribution by Jupiter's gravitational influence, loses its architect. The implications of this are not speculative, they are mechanical. They follow directly from the removal of the dominant gravitational term in the equations governing inner system stability. And in spring 2026, Something of unknown mass and unknown nature positioned itself close enough to Jupiter to begin pulling on that engine. It has no name because it has no confirmed identity. In the internal ESA and NASA working documents circulated between March and May 2026, it is referred to variably as Gravitational Anomaly J-2026-L4, and in informal correspondence between research teams as the lensing object. Neither designation tells you what it is. Both tell you only what it does. It bends gravity. It pulls. It warps the local metric of spacetime in its immediate vicinity with a consistency that implies a concentrated mass. Current best estimates, derived from the degree of orbital perturbation observed in 17 tracked Trojan asteroids in Jupiter's L4 Lagrange cluster, place the anomaly's mass at somewhere between 0.5 and 2.8 Earth masses. The uncertainty range is enormous. The lower bound is terrifying enough. 3 categories of explanation have been formally proposed, and none has been eliminated. The first is a rogue planetary body, a super-Earth or sub-Neptune class object that was ejected from another stellar system during that system's formation and has been drifting through interstellar space for billions of years before entering our own system on a trajectory that brought it into the outer belt region. Rogue planets are not theoretical. They have been directly observed and cataloged. They are common. The universe is full of evicted worlds, cold and lightless, wandering without stars. That one could drift into an inhabited system is not a violation of physics. It is a statistical eventuality. The second explanation is a primordial black hole. Primordial black holes are theoretical objects formed in the first fractions of a second after the Big Bang, when the density of the early universe was sufficient to collapse regions of space directly into singularities without the intermediate step of stellar formation. A primordial black hole in the mass range of 1 to 2 Earth masses would have a Schwarzschild radius measured in nanometers. It would be physically smaller than a grain of sand. It would be completely dark. It would emit Hawking radiation at a temperature so cold that it would be utterly undetectable against the cosmic microwave background. It would be, to all practical observational purposes, invisible, and it would carry full gravitational authority proportional to its mass. If J-2026-L4 is a primordial black hole, it is not merely invisible, it is fundamentally undetectable by any instrument currently deployed or currently buildable. We would never see it, we would only feel it pull. The third explanation is a localized concentration of dark matter, a clump of non-baryonic mass dense enough to produce measurable gravitational effects without interacting with the electromagnetic spectrum in any way. This explanation is the most exotic, and for certain physicists, the most attractive, precisely because it would explain the complete absence of any optical or thermal signature. Dark matter does not interact with light. It does not emit it, absorb it, or reflect it. It simply exists as gravitational mass, invisible in every frequency we have ever learned to read. A dark matter concentration of sufficient density in the outer belt region would produce exactly the lensing signature observed in the Webb data. It would also be entirely, permanently beyond our ability to deflect, destroy, or interact with by any means available to us. The identity does not change the consequence. Whatever it is, it has mass. It is near Jupiter, and it is not leaving. The mechanism of destruction is not explosive. It does not announce itself. It operates through a process called orbital resonance perturbation, and it works with the patience and inevitability of arithmetic itself. To understand it, you must first understand what a solar system actually is. It is not a collection of independent objects moving in private lanes. It is a coupled system. Every mass in this system exerts gravitational force on every other mass. The force diminishes with the square of distance, but it never reaches zero. Jupiter pulls on Mercury. Mercury pulls on Neptune. The interactions are hierarchical, dominated by the Sun, then by Jupiter, then by Saturn, but they are total. Everything is connected to everything else through the continuous medium of gravitational force. and the orbits we observe are the current equilibrium expression of all those forces operating simultaneously over geological time. Orbital resonance is what happens when two bodies develop a ratio relationship between their orbital periods that causes them to exert gravitational force on each other at regular, repeating intervals. The Kirkwood gaps in the asteroid belt are the most visible example. At the 3-to-1 resonance with Jupiter, the distance at which an asteroid would complete exactly 3 orbits for every 1 Jupiter orbit, there are almost no asteroids. Jupiter's periodic gravitational tug at that resonance location, applied repeatedly over millions of years, has cleared the region entirely. The asteroids that once occupied those resonance corridors were either ejected or driven into collision courses with the inner planets. The gaps are the archaeological record of orbital infection. They are the places where the mathematics ran to completion. Now introduce J-2026-L4, a mass of subplanetary to planetary scale, positioned in or near Jupiter's Lagrange corridor. Its gravitational influence applies continuous force on Jupiter's orbit. The force is small relative to Jupiter's own gravitational binding energy, but it is consistent. It is applied every orbital period. In the language of dynamical systems, this is a perturbation, and the science of perturbation theory, developed by Laplace and Lagrange themselves, is explicit about what perturbations do over sufficient time. They accumulate. Small errors in orbital elements, semi-major axis, eccentricity, inclination, argument of perihelion, do not average out. They drift. They build. The orbit of a perturbed body does not oscillate symmetrically around its original path. It migrates. Given enough time and a persistent enough perturbation source, even Jupiter's orbit migrates. A shift in Jupiter's semi-major axis of 1 part in 10,000, a change so small as to be instrumentally undetectable in the short term, is sufficient to alter the resonance relationships between Jupiter and the asteroid belt. The Kirkwood gaps shift position, the cleared corridors drift, and in the regions that Jupiter's resonance can no longer maintain in their cleared state, new population of asteroids finds gravitational permission to occupy unstable trajectories. The infection has begun. It spreads outward through the resonance network of the outer system and inward through the gravitational coupling between Jupiter and the terrestrial planets. Mars moves first. Its orbit is the most sensitive among the inner planets to Jovian perturbation. Mars's orbital eccentricity increases, and an increase in Mars's orbital eccentricity changes the gravitational environment experienced by Earth. The coupled system propagates the error, from a ghost mass to Jupiter, from Jupiter to asteroid belt, from Jupiter to Mars, from Mars to Earth. Each step takes time, thousands of years, tens of thousands, but the direction is fixed. The error does not reverse. It compounds. The asteroid belt contains an estimated 1.1 to 1.9 million objects larger than 1 kilometer in diameter. There are tens of millions of objects large enough to cause regional devastation on a continental scale. There are billions of objects large enough to reach the surface of a planet and leave a crater. Under normal conditions, the conditions that have existed since the late heavy bombardment, approximately 3.9 billion years ago, the vast majority of these objects are gravitationally managed. Jupiter's resonance network keeps them distributed in a stable population, their orbits crossing each other on timescales too long to produce frequent collisions, their resonance relationships with Jupiter preventing systematic migration into the inner system. When Jupiter's orbit shifts, this management system fails. Not immediately, not in a single catastrophic release. The failure is procedural. Resonance corridors that Jupiter currently maintains in cleared states begin to accept new populations. Objects that were previously held in stable resonance relationships with Jupiter begin to experience the perturbation, the accumulated gravitational nudge that changes their orbital eccentricities over thousands of years. Their perihelia, the closest points of their orbits to the Sun, begin to drift inward. Not all of them, not at once, but statistically, in the aggregate, the flux of asteroids crossing Earth's orbit begins to increase. The Earth's atmosphere handles objects up to approximately 25 meters diameter with relative completeness. They burn, they fragment, they distribute their kinetic energy across the upper atmosphere and arrive at the surface as meteor showers and small craters. An object of 100 meters diameter reaching the surface delivers energy equivalent to a large nuclear weapon. An object of 1 kilometer diameter produces a regional extinction event. An object of 10 kilometers diameter produces a global extinction event. The Chicxulub impactor that terminated the Cretaceous period and erased the non-avian dinosaurs 66 million years ago is estimated at 12 to 15 kilometers diameter. It was not an exceptional asteroid. It was an ordinary one, redirected by the gravitational bookkeeping of the outer solar system. When Jupiter's filter degrades, the rate of large impactors crossing Earth's orbit increases. Not to certain impact, probability still governs individual trajectories, but when the rate of crossing objects increases by even a small percentage, the expected time to impact decreases proportionally. The question of when Earth absorbs a civilization-ending impact ceases to be geological time. It becomes historical time. The defense we have never built against a threat we have always known becomes urgent at the exact moment that our ability to deflect it has been compromised by the gravitational rearrangement of the outer system. The shield becomes a funnel, the bodyguard has been moved, and the objects are already in motion. The terminal scenario is not impact. Impact is a wound. The terminal scenario is ejection. Ejection is death. Ejection is what the mathematics of orbital chaos does to small planets when the large planets that anchor them begin to migrate. It is the final stage of the gravitational infection, and it operates on a timescale that makes it uniquely horrifying. Slow enough that every step is observable and comprehensible, fast enough that nothing can be done. As Jupiter's orbit migrates under the persistent influence of J-2026-L4, the secular resonance relationships that currently stabilize Earth's orbit begin to shift. Earth's orbital eccentricity, currently a near-circular 0.0167, barely distinguishable from a perfect circle, begins to increase. The orbit stretches. Perihelion, the closest approach to the Sun, remains approximately constant in the early stages. Aphelion, the furthest point, extends outward. Earth begins to spend more of its year further from the Sun. The energy budget of the surface begins to shift. The insolation, the quantity of solar radiation received per unit area, decreases on average. Climate systems that have operated within a relatively narrow energy envelope for millions of years begin to experience forcing in a direction they have not been forced before. As Jupiter's orbit migrates under the persistent influence of J-2026-L4, the eccentricity continues to increase over thousands of years. The orbital period extends. Earth takes longer to complete one revolution. The seasonal extremes amplify. The winters of aphelion become colder. The oceans, the largest heat reservoir on the planet's surface, begin to lose thermal energy faster than they gain it. Ice sheets that currently form at the poles begin to extend to lower latitudes. The albedo, the reflectivity of the surface, increases as ice coverage grows, reflecting more solar radiation back into space, accelerating the cooling in a self-reinforcing feedback loop. This is not a new ice age. A new ice age is a temporary climactic oscillation. This is a directional thermal decline with no restoring force. At some point in the eccentricity increase, the orbit of Earth begins to cross the orbit of Mars. The two planets approach each other periodically. Gravitational interactions between them during these approaches further perturb both orbits. The system becomes chaotic in the precise mathematical sense. Initial conditions become exponentially sensitive. Long-term prediction becomes impossible. The trajectories diverge. In some branches of the probability distribution, Earth is ejected. The gravitational interaction during a close planetary approach provides a velocity kick that moves Earth's orbit into a hyperbolic trajectory. Earth leaves the solar system, not instantly, not dramatically, slowly. Over thousands of years, the aphelion extends further and further from the Sun. The solar disk in the sky grows smaller. The light grows dimmer. The warmth decreases continuously and without reversal. The oceans freeze from the poles downward. The process takes centuries. The ice thickness thickens. Below the ice, liquid water persists for a period, sustained by geothermal heat from the planet's interior. The deep ocean biosphere, the hydrothermal vent ecosystems that do not depend on solar energy, persists for longer. But the atmosphere, no longer sustained by the liquid water cycle, begins to collapse. Water vapor precipitates and freezes, then carbon dioxide, nitrogen eventually. The atmospheric pressure at the surface decreases. What remains of the atmosphere freezes to the ground. The planet becomes airless. The surface temperature decreases to equilibrium with the cosmic microwave background, 2.7 Kelvin, minus 270 degrees Celsius, the absolute cold of deep space. Earth does not explode. Earth does not burn. Earth drifts, dark and silent and encased in frozen atmosphere, into the permanent blackness between the stars. No process that we understand will reverse it. No timescale we can meaningfully conceptualize will end it. It is permanent. It is the ejection protocol. And the mathematics that governs it does not negotiate. The anomaly is registered. It is in the data. The gravitational shadow of J-2026-L4 is documented in the Webb telescope returns from March 2026, cross-confirmed against Gaia astrometric baselines, peer-reviewed in 3 separate preliminary analyses circulated through the planetary science community in the spring of that year. This is not speculation. This is observation. Something is out there, in the outer belt region near Jupiter's Lagrange corridor, and it has mass, and it is pulling. We do not know what it is. We do not know its precise mass. We do not know its trajectory. We do not know whether it is itself in a stable orbit within the solar system, whether it is a transient object passing through on a hyperbolic path, or whether it is permanently resident. We do not know its composition, its size, its origin, or its future position. We have a gravitational shadow and an error bar. We are inside the house looking at the shadow under the door, and we cannot open the door. What we know about orbital mechanics is total. The mathematics of gravitational perturbation, developed over 3 centuries of increasingly precise analysis, is not uncertain. The physics is closed. Given the mass of the anomaly and its proximity to Jupiter, the perturbative influence on Jupiter's orbit is real and ongoing. The accumulation of orbital error is not a future possibility. It has already begun. Whether the magnitude of that error will, on timescales of thousands to hundreds of thousands of years, propagate into the resonance cascade that destabilizes the asteroid belt and the inner planets, depends on parameters we do not yet have the measurements to determine. But the mechanism exists. The pathway from ghost mass to orbital infection to asteroid avalanche to planetary ejection is not hypothetical. It is the documented history of other solar systems, observed in the orbital architecture of exoplanetary systems that show the scars of past dynamical instability. Systems with hot Jupiters that migrated inward, systems with missing terrestrial planets, systems with anomalous eccentricities that record ancient gravitational violence. We are not special. We are one configuration of matter, temporarily stable, in a universe that does not select for stability. The solar system's current order is 4.5 billion years old. It has survived the late heavy bombardment, the grand tack migration of Jupiter and Saturn in the early system, the gradual outward migration of the ice giants. Each of these events was a perturbation. Each of them changed the system. The system absorbed them and reorganized. There is no guarantee that the next perturbation is within the system's absorptive capacity. There is no law that states the configuration must persist. There is only the current state of the equations, and the equations now include a term that was not there before March 2026, a mass, unnamed, invisible, pulling. We built cities. We built languages and libraries and instruments sensitive enough to detect the gravitational whisper of an invisible object at the distance of Jupiter. We detected it, We documented it. We understand the mechanism by which it could end us, and we can do nothing with that understanding. There is no intervention available at planetary scales. There is no rocket capable of nudging Jupiter. There is no shield buildable against a cascade of millions of asteroids. There is no technology that arrests the slow stretching of an orbit under secular resonance perturbation. The sophistication of our knowledge and the completeness of our helplessness have arrived simultaneously, which is the only kind of conclusion the universe has ever offered. We are in the waiting room. The anomaly does not wait with us. It simply pulls.